Hello, friends. We're going to see if we can get our brushing to function properly. I'm not holding my breath because I've had lots of problems again today. So if you're joining me right now, welcome. I have to give this about 30, 40 seconds to see if I get an indication as to whether it's working or not. So bear with me while we wait. Maybe? Got two people watching? Good. All right. So I had hoped to finish this painting in a day. A day and then a second day to glaze. Long story. Finally down to finishing touches. And I'm going to do a glaze partly just because personally, it's my style. I love glazes. Now, very important word of caution. Most of the time, when I glaze, I use Liquid Original. This is a fast dry medium. Got it? But I can't use that on this painting because there were parts of this painting that did not dry fast. So that means on day one, I didn't use enough of this, who knows what, but because on day two, there were bits that were still tacky. That means it was not fast dry. Therefore, any glazes I do on top of this now must be slow dry. My favorite slow dry medium is this strangely named stuff from Gamblin called Neo McGilp. It's got to be the worst marketing name I know of. Anyway, so that's what I've got here on my palette. I like it. It's slow dry, which I don't like, but I don't have any choice. I like it because it's very glossy, very transparent, very slippery, slimy, smooth, not sticky. Your brush drags very easily across the painting. Now let me zoom in a little bit here so you can see what I'm doing. I like the color pretty well the way it is, but I'm going to warm it up just a tiny, tiny, tiny bit. So I've picked up just a hint. Oh. That, ladies and gentlemen, is not a tiny bit. And that was about 2 hairs of this brush. That was roughly 2 hairs of this brush that got into my Indian yellow, which just gives you an idea how potent and impotent, very impotent color, how potent Indian yellow is. Okay, so as you see, I'm not all terribly upset because I believe I can wipe all that off. So what I want to do, see, now that's just about perfect. So I'm going to just continue with that here, putting on way too much yellow. Just warming the whole thing up a little bit. There, that's probably done. Then coming back and wiping more than half of that off, probably. Okay, I like that better. I do. Now, I'm going to, I want just a few of the highlights here on her nose, where I've got a dry spot on the rag, on her cheek, on her teeth maybe. Just the highlights. I want to lift out and take some of the yellow out of that. And I think that's done. And I don't know if you can even see any difference. I can. And the painting is just ever so slightly warmer than it was just a few minutes ago. Now, I'm going to come back and do any touch-up I want to. By the way, who was it? Just tubing by. Thank you if you happen to catch this. You thought the mouth was wrong, and you made me look, man. You made me look. I came back and examined it, and I'm going to do a tiny bit of touch-up right here, but I think the mouth is good. Anyway, little touch-ups. So yes, I'm going to do touch-up on top of the glazes, which means the glaze that I'm putting down right now is not like a varnish. It truly is part of the painting process. So when I'm finished, there will be parts of the painting that are shiny and parts that are not so shiny. And that's one of the reasons I like to varnish a painting when I'm all done. Okay, but before I do details here, I want to do background. So I've just added a little bit of oxide red to what was already on my brush here. Oh, you know, I was hoping I could get by with one painting, with one brush, just so I could save the hassle of cleaning, but I just can't. That is just too slow. So here we go. Okay, so you'll notice I'm doing a warm glaze on top of a cool color. That blue that I put down, a blue translucent, important word, they're not transparent. The blue was done on top of brown. So the underpainting was brown, then I did blue cool, and now I'm doing brown warm again on top of the blue. Now, if I don't want this much, I may not want it this brown, but we'll see here. I want to look at it. The trick, what I'm trying to convey to you right here is the trick, if you will, one of my favorites, and I use it in my regular painting all the time, and that is that we, the human eye, again, we human beings, we get a kick out of seeing cross temperature glazes. That is opposite temperature. If there's a warm color on your canvas, put a cool glaze on top of it. We love that because it just creates a rich, hard to define. So that's what I just did there. Now down here, I've got, as you can see, a warm color. So what do you think I'm going to do down there? You got it. I'm going to do a cool glaze on top of that warm. Now you might be saying, well, if you do warm on cool and cool on warm, won't you end up with just the same color across the whole canvas? The answer is, yeah, maybe. Well, let's find out. We'll all find out together. And if we don't like it, we will undo it, won't we? That's part of the fun, of course. Part of the fun of doing glazes on, and you only do glaze, I was going to say on top of a finished painting. That's the only time you do is on top of something that's already dry. So I do lots of glazes in acrylics because they dry quickly. In oil, whenever you do a glaze, you have to wait till what's underneath is dry. Otherwise, you're not glazing, you're just mixing on the canvas. So if I do something here that I don't like, of course, I will just, as you saw a minute ago, I'll just take a rag and wipe it off. Because I don't know exactly what it's going to look like. So I have just done exactly what I told you. I did a cool glaze on top of warm and a warm glaze on top of cool. And I'm not looking at it very carefully yet. I'm still painting. But I got to tell you, yeah. Yes, 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 yes. Success. That was sweet. The whole thing is sweet. The warm on top of the cool up here, and the cool on top of warm. And they are not this. I did not end up with the same colors. I didn't really think I would. You'd have to be pretty tricky to get the same color. But in both cases, I end up with my favorite word is rich. Another word would be visually complex sets of colors. Your brain is really challenged simply trying to come up with a description, if you know, for what color is that, so to speak. Yes, of course, it's some kind of gray in both cases. A cool gray and a warm gray. Brownish. Down here, we'd call it more of a brown. In fact, it's so brown that I'm actually going to come in and add more. I didn't tell you I'm using straight ultramarine down here. I'm going to darken this foreground just a little bit more. There. Yeah. Liking that. So obviously this is a real simple background to a portrait. It's a style. For some portrait painters, it's a cop-out. I don't think I would win anything in Portrait Society of America. Not that I would win anything with those guys anyway, don't get me wrong. But they tend to favor interesting backgrounds. I think they tend to frown on the snobs, if you will. The snobs of the portrait world tend to frown on this kind of background. Doesn't bother me a bit. Okay, now I just saw something up here. I want to darken these corners. I want the vignette, classic vignette, these corners. And I don't want them going that blue, so I just mixed up my favorite color killer. My favorite tube of color killer these days is raw umber. And I use a student grade raw umber on purpose because it keeps me from having to be too careful. Because a student grade paint typically doesn't have a lot of pigment in it. And so when I'm just killing a color, the way I was doing right there, I like not having to measure myself too carefully. I just want to grab a dab, if you will, of that stuff. Okay, I like that background. Yahoo! That was easy, wasn't it? Now, a few bits of touch-up. First of all, this eye. And this is the eye that I moved over yesterday. You can watch me. I moved it over about 1/8 of an inch that way. I talked a whole bunch about how painful that is, and yet in the final analysis, it really isn't as difficult as it sounds. But I've ended up with a little bit too much darkness underneath her eye in particular. So I'm just going to come in here and touch up. Oh, one other thing. Well, two other things. I just picked up this very fine brush and find that it's got some runaway bristles on it. And I'm going to go ahead and just cut those off. This is a good brush. I'm not sure how I abused it to create those runaways, but I did. Okay. One other thing, again, because I have everything I use now has to be slow dry, so I may not use my usual. The hairline on her forehead seems to be flat. Hey, David. Thank you. Let me look. A shadow line I got. Thank you for saying that. I will absolutely look at that, David. Thank you for your input. And I lost contact with you just a minute ago. I was about to say, because I'm in slow dry mode now, I cannot use my alkyd. Alkyd means alkaline. That means it's a fast drying paint. So I have to use plain old-fashioned regular titanium white so that I don't run into cracking, drying problems. Thank you, David. I will look at that hairline in just a minute. Right now, I'm going to go ahead and try to fix underneath her eye right here. It's like she's got makeup on, or if even more than that, she's got a little bit of Cleopatra makeup. Do you know what I mean by that? The Egyptian, hyper dark stuff. But I think if I just come in here and lighten this a little bit, we'll be all set. Yeah, that might be it. Now, having done that, I just noticed there is a tiny, almost tear reflection in the bottom of her eye down here. So I'm going to do that. Let me zoom in, you guys, see if I can get you closer here. All right. Okay, David, my good friend David, hairline seems to be a little flat. Thank you. I believe you are correct. I believe you're correct. All I need to do is add a little blush. Can you see this? Right there. And I don't have that. This is one. All right, I lost you again. Very irritating this. Anyway, thank you so much for your help, David. I don't know when I lost you, but yes, you're correct. Thank you for pointing that out. I need a little bit of a blush shadow up here under her hair. And now you can't see it. Let me see if I can fix that. Okay, right here. I was saying, this is wonderful. I love it. I have to put everybody else's signature on it along with mine. I was about to say, before I turned around and discovered I was no longer broadcasting, this right here is a good example of, if you follow me often, one of my most familiar mantras, one of the things that I really feel strongly about, is that in painting, you get dark with transparent colors, light with opaque. That's the rule. But every rule can be broken. That's why the name of my, God only knows when it's going to come out, book is called The Breakable Laws of Painting. And that particular rule is broken most often in portraiture. The reason is, so in other words, when I'm doing this shadow under her hair at the top of her forehead, sorry about all that. And again, I've ordered my new Mevo camera. It has not come yet. I can't wait. When I did this shadow up here, I did not use a purely transparent paint. It has a little bit of white in it. Why? Because in portraiture, our tolerances are so narrow that following the rule often ends up in over-exaggerating. Okay, what else was I going to say? Oh yeah, her top lip. Right down here. Her lip is coming up just a tiny, tiny, tiny bit too far. Again, sort of 3 cheers for doing a portrait over a couple of days, because that's what is helping me the most in this adventure, is being able to look at it with fresh eyes every day. Not to mention the help that I'm also getting from you, my viewers. This is wonderful. And again, I'm going to do a couple little things to her mouth. Not much. And I think I can, whoops, a little too bright. Whoops, a little too bright. So let's darken that down a little bit. Yeah. Better. And then over here, need to get a more neutral tone, try to make, so I picked up some ultramarine, oxide red, more of a gray tone. This tooth right here doesn't come up quite high enough. It's very, very dark, very muted in there. I don't want to start, but that tooth needs to come up a little higher. And I think that's got it. Actually, there's one thing that's irritating me just a tiny bit. Are we still here? Oh, and I'm sorry, I lost you there, didn't I? There we go. Sorry about that. Okay, I'm back. I'm back in the screen. So once again, I'm using regular titanium, not the Alkyd titanium. What is bothering me is I have a slight line boundary between the red of her bottom lip and the flesh tone. And in reality, that's a very clean, actually gradual line that should not be a hard. So I'm trying to mix up a color that's right in between the red and the flesh. And I'm just going to cover up that little sliver of darkness. I'm not sure I'm going to be able to do it. Right. Well, okay, I've got rid of the line, but now her bottom lip doesn't go down far enough. So, but that's an easy fix. I'm going to mix up that red lip color. Lips, by the way, I would think, I don't know about you, but if I were just using my intuition, I would think that lips would be a very warm red normally. That is toward orange side of the spectrum, because it's flesh tone mixed with red. Blood and flesh mixed together to make that red. And in this case, in her face, it is true. It's a fairly warm red. What surprises me is how often, when I'm doing portraits, how often that is not the case. Actually, the color of a person's lips is often surprisingly cool. So always look, don't assume that it's going to be, again, my intuition would assume that it's going to be a warm red, but it many times is not. Now, I've just mixed up a tiny bit of violet into what was already on my brushes. Tiny, tiny, tiny bit of purple. Because again, and by the way, that's one of the great things about using a cell phone is you can see the color. See, I did much of this painting from this, and it's a fine print. It's a good print, but it's not as good as the phone for seeing color. Now, let's see if there's anything else I want to do. Especially, do I want to do anything to this Disney watch? Yeah, just a tiny bit. Do I keep saying that a lot? Tiny bit, tiny bit? Well, that's it. That's the nature of final edits, right? Final touch-ups is tiny bit, tiny bit. You see, if I had more than a tiny bit to touch up, then I would do the touch-up first and wait for another day to do the glaze. But when it's down to just quote-unquote tiny bits, I feel like I can get away with doing the glaze and then doing the touch-up, and the painting will be done. I'll sign this in just a few minutes. I won't make you watch me sign it, and I have a sort of a standard rant that I have about signatures. And I'm 2 days ago, my wife and I were visiting some good friends of ours, and they had a number of very nice paintings in their home, and they commissioned me to do another one, which is nice. I'm excited about that. But two of the nice paintings, one had no signature at all, which is just a mistake. I've been called back to galleries many times over the years. Every time it happens, I think, I can't believe this is the last time that's going to happen. And then I do it again, where I've forgotten to sign. Anyway, one painting by the same artist, one had no signature and the other had initials. And I launched so much so that my wife had to give me one of those wifely, poke in the ribs kind of thing, like, you're overdoing it. So let me overdo it with you guys right now and tell you, if you want to make, now, upper lip edge, create an upper lip line, David. It is dry enough to glaze, and this is oil. Thank you, Patrick. And David, upper lip, top edge, created that again with your encouragement. Okay, now I was going to talk about signatures. I think we're good, David. I think we're good on the upper lip, although, every time you look at it, you can see something else. So just because you said that, I'm going to make one very tiny change. There, I'm using the word tiny again. I'm going to make one tiny change. There is a tiny bit more of a highlight of color at the apogee, the foremost point of her upper lip that I haven't reflected, and I can increase that. That's good. All right, I think I'm done. I don't want to hear any more. I'm kidding. I was going to say I don't want to hear any more corrections. Stop telling me what's wrong. I'm kidding, but I think I'm done. Okay, so if you're an artist and you do not want to sell any paintings, if you do not want to be known, if you do not want to make any money, then don't pay attention to this. But if you're an artist who you want people to know who you are, and if, for goodness sake, if you want people to buy your paintings, then here's one of the rules. There's several, but do not use initials. In fact, Now, initials and a last name, D. Nelson or DJ Nelson, that's fine. But do not use initial. That's Bush League. To me, it screams out, I am an amateur, I'm a beginner, I'm a student. And if you are an amateur, beginner, student, still don't use your initials. And the other day I was looking at some very fine paintings at these people's house down in Cary, North Carolina. Very fine paintings. And one had no signature, which is a mistake. The other had initials, which is also a mistake. So I'm not going to make you watch me sign my name, but I will tell you, you use a Winsor Newton Series 7 brush. Don't even waste your time with anything else. And you take your time and you write very carefully, in my opinion. And my opinion is right on this one. Being that I'm so humble, huh, David? Write neatly, take a little time. I've heard some funny things. One art teacher evidently tells his students, all signatures should be red. Oh, that is so absurd. That is so crazy. One mistake that I see, I guess I'm not going to make you watch me do this, but here's another mistake, and then we'll leave it at this, is, again, beginners, amateurs, they'll sign their painting way down here in the corner. In fact, if the painting was framed and overlapped a quarter an inch, it would cover up half their signature. And that just, to me, is a bad self-image. Just like, forgive me for breathing. I'm sorry I'm on the planet. Forgive me for taking up space that could be used by a worthy human being. That's what that says to me when you paint down there, when you sign it. So no, you want it to be somewhere comfortable, as if you were a graphic designer and this was a poster. Where would you put your signature? So and this one about an inch up from the bottom. And yeah, it takes some, look at me propping up my hand. Oh, here's another one that I heard. Some teacher somewhere says you should be able to write your signature with one stroke, with one brush, one stroke of the brush. Again, that's crazy. That's all I'm going to do on camera. I'm going to say goodbye. And I will be broadcasting later this afternoon on my 30 by 40 inch painting traffic painting. So if you want to watch me paint traffic, please join me then. Thanks, guys. Let me see if I missed any other comments before I go. Thanks, David. Appreciate it. Got it. Appreciate it. Bye.